I'm interested in your thoughts on why we've seen this increase. Why has it gone from 6 incidents to 64 incidents over the last 20 years? What do you think is causing that? I mean, something must be different. People are more inclined to take these sorts of undertake these drastic attacks like this, or try to.
I get asked that. It's like the $64,000 question. Why does this keep happening? Why is it getting worse? And I think that it is. I think we've had such a dramatic increase over the last 4 years, and I think that really has a lot to do with we have. Not that maybe listeners want to hear this, but we have an incredible increased number of guns out there, right? 19 million guns last year purchased. So we have a huge number of guns out there. And so then you compare, 400 million plus guns and put those in the hands of anybody who wants one, kind of, which I know that's not the standard, but so many people who can get them legally. Most of the guns that are used in mass shootings are legally purchased. And then you add on top of that a few years of pandemic, job loss, changes in the economy, people who everything has been upset, where they used to go to the office every day, 9 to 5, or they'd go down to be a mechanic at their local shop. And now the shops are closed. So suddenly they don't get paid because they can't work at home. They're a mechanic, for crying out loud. And so there's massive financial stress, health issues. There have been instability as family members have been sick and died off, and you're having to support other family members. I think all of those stressors have been like on overload. So when I talked earlier about what are the stressors, they're on overload, and then put on top of that, they're all on overload because of the pandemic and because of the economy and because of, and I'm so mad at you. And then I think the third layer is really that we have done a kind of disservice to ourselves by talking on so much on Twitter and Instagram and every other website about the shooters and kind of glorifying the shooters. And through the years, we've done that by mistake. And when we continue to retweet and ask about why did he do this and why did he do that, and putting his picture up there, the next guy who wants to be the glorified shooter thinks I can gain infamy from it. That's why I never use a shooter's name. They all think they're going to be famous. None of them are famous. Yeah. None of them are famous.
Yeah. When I look at the why, I think it's really hard to answer. There's all three of those are fairly popular explanations that people give to one degree or another. I think they all have some issues, right? Obviously we've had a lot of guns in the United States for a long time. In fact, polling indicates that more people percentage-wise used to own guns.
Yes. And spread out over more households. Yeah. Right. We have more guns now, but they were spread out over more households before. But now we're kind of bending back.
And
to
you've
it.
seen,
Right.
You saw a period of incredibly low violent crime and murder rates in the United States at the same time that we were also seeing an incredible increase in gun sales. So it's, maybe that's different for these particular shootings. I don't know, but and then when you get to there's strengths and weaknesses to all those arguments, and I don't know that there's I've never heard a perfect one.
Yeah,
the contagion effect or the fame is there's evidence for that and evidence against it.
I don't know that there's any evidence against it, but I'd be happy if you pointed it out.
Sure. Well, I've read a couple pieces that indicate that. Well, Professor James Allen Fox says that the contagion effect is not something that he notices in like the clustering of events are not really statistically.
I get that. I disagree with him on it, but that's okay because that's what researchers do. But let me tell you something about what you're saying that I just wanted to make one more point because I think what you're saying is so important for listeners to remember. A lot of this why is what we call, like now I'll be the prosecutor I used to be. It's motive. And it's really easy to get lost on the motive why somebody did something. Motive is not something we prove in a court of law. We don't care what your motive is. We care if you did it. That's what you get convicted of.
Right.
You could be completely unintending to do something. There certainly is a mens rea, right? There's an aspect of motive in certain types of laws like murder. First degree murder is you anticipated doing that. You went there with the tools. You intended to do that. But in general, what we are looking at and often get lost in is this whole pool of why did this guy do it? Why did he do it? When really what we're looking for is what behaviors did he have that led him to it? We can identify the behaviors even if we can't get inside.
That's a very good point. I think this is a very strong point because you can see those warning signs and then perhaps you can do something about it on the individual basis when it's happening. I think it's much harder to come up with the perfect, unified theory as to why these active shooter incidents appear to be increasing.
Right.
That's a much harder thing to do. And it may not even be as important as, somebody as informing the public to understand what warning signs to look for. I mean, even the pandemic thing, that one sounds very reasonable to me, and it's something that I would strongly agree with. Makes a lot of sense as far as the stressors are increasing, then you should expect to see more of these sort of events happening. And but the crazy thing was that in 2020 we had fewer, right? But now that's probably because of the lockdowns.
We didn't though. We didn't look at the numbers. Mm-hmm. We didn't have fewer. If you look at the FBI numbers, we didn't have fewer in 2020. It was 30, 30, 40, and 61.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So and I didn't know that myself, right? I mean, I'm writing a book during the pandemic, locked here in my dining room because everybody else is all locked down, right? And I'm writing a book, but of course I'm, calling my counterpart at the FBI and saying, hey, what's going on? And they're saying I can't even explain it.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually.
In school shootings,
Yeah, it's a good point. We had fewer successful ones, fewer successful is probably there's a bad word for it, but
don't use that word,
we had fewer attacks where the person was actually able to kill a lot of people, and that was probably because of the lockdowns and fewer crowds around. But I think that's a good point. We did see a 50% increase from 2020 to 2021, but that doesn't mean that 2020. That just means that they were 30 in 2020, right? Which is not out of line with what we've seen before.
If you go backwards, it was 61, 40, 30, 30.
Right. Okay.
So, do the math on those years, 21, 20, 19, 18, which would have put us right before the pandemic, right? So, but you know what? Something else I wanted to tell you that is one of the reasons why I'm hopeful and other people should be hopeful is when we saw the numbers from the FBI for this year, I was actually the guy who took my job at the FBI. He and I were at lunch the day they released those, and he picked his phone up and he goes, "Oh, they just released the numbers." And when I started to dissect those numbers, one of the things that I noticed is the casualty count is dramatically lower. So I attribute that to, so we may have more incidents, but we have a lower casualty count over the last couple of years. And I attribute that to law enforcement's doing a better job of responding, and the public is doing a better job of, running and hiding and fighting.
Yeah.
We're not going down. We're the guys in the plane crashing in Pennsylvania. We're not going down without a fight.
Interesting.
And so the casualties are like half of what they were, when I started doing this research in terms of, from a percentage standpoint.
That is
so to me, that means we're making ground.
Well, that is a positive note to end on, at least.